Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Jody Lynn, before we get started, we usually check in and see how we're doing and so forth. And before we got going here, we realized that we have stuff we need to talk about after the show, like we do so often now, our after show stuff. But something else came out of that early conversation that we had, both you and me, and with our guest who's joining us today, Melissa Crook, that there is a lot of stuff going on in the world. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff to feel anxious about or excited about, or, you know, depending on what your perspective is, right? I mean, there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. There's a ton.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, how appropriate that our guest, Melissa, is the host of a podcast called Feel. Right?
That.
I mean, that's like the perfect setup. And we didn't even realize we were setting it up when we talked about that.
Just divine timing and intervention.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Melissa, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be here. I love coming on and talking about my story, you know, which is ironic because at the time it didn't seem like something I'd be so excited to talk about, but it birthed a season in my life that I needed, and it birthed this creation of this framework that I think all women can benefit from and probably need, even if they don't know it. So sometimes those things in life that scare you are the things that you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true. And the things that you experience in life.
Yeah.
They may scare you, but that's a theme that shows up a lot here on this podcast.
I bet.
From all the different interviews that we do, conversations that we have, how often we go through what we like to euphemistically call crash and burn cycles. Something really bad happens, and almost every single time the person who it happened to tells us that they never want to go through it again, but it was the best thing that ever happened.
I know. And it's ironic because I created this framework hoping to get it in women's hands early enough in life that they don't get there. It's like, this doesn't have to be the way it is. But I will tell you, most women I talk to on my show, on my platform, have had that. And we all are united in like, we don't have to get there. Let's do better for ourselves, for our daughters, our granddaughters, you know, and get these narratives switched and changed and unlearned. So moving forward, that's not the headline.
And by the way, men experience the exact same thing. We just do it on different stuff, but it's
1000% sure. My husband had his own. Totally agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, what was your crash and burn?
Speaking of crash and burn, here you go. In the fall of 2019, we had just moved to Lubbock, Texas. My husband had taken a job at Texas Tech University. It was the first move we've moved all over the country. I've told you guys that before. He works in higher ed, college education. We've moved all over. Our kids were all born in 3 different states, the whole 9 yards. This was, I think at that point, our 11th move. I could move, my oldest daughter jokes, moving's like your Olympic sport, Mom. Like you've got it, it's like nailed. I don't know if that's, a badge of honor to wear, but it became mine. So I knew how to move. And this was the first move with the kids all grown. They were our oldest had just gotten married that previous spring, and our other 2 were in college. So I was like, this will be nothing. No schools to find, no activities to connect to, no kids to manage change and moves and new friends and sad and all that. It's just me and Brady, my husband, for the first time in so long, 25 years, I think at that point. And so we get there and we're in a hotel while we're waiting for our house to close. And I go for my morning run, and I come back and I took a shower and I couldn't settle. Like my body just wouldn't settle, and my heartbeat's racing and my blood pressure. I didn't know at the time, but I was feeling lightheaded and I'm like, am I having a heart attack? I mean, I don't really I've never had any health issues. I've always been, but perimenopause, which I didn't know that word when I started it, is a funny thing. You don't know. I mean, I just turned 50. So I go down to the lobby and I'm feeling worse. And I go to the poor guy at the front desk. I'm like, he's college age kid, I'm sure. And I'm like, hi, and typical women. And I talk about this on my podcast. I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm like, really? I think I'm having a heart attack and I'm apologizing for bothering the kid, which is its own story. But I think I'm having a heart attack and might need an ambulance. This poor kid just, white as a sheet. What would I do here? Well, it turns out this particular hotel had all these policies and things you had to like sign and for them to waivers and whatnot they were going to call an ambulance for you. And like, I could have dropped dead on the floor before I got, and I'm like, not really in the state of mind to do that. And he's just doing his job. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to text my husband real quick. He's 5 minutes away. I think I can maybe get there faster and not have to sign any waivers. Yeah. So I text my husband and it's like his, second week on the job. And I'm like, so in the lobby at the hotel and think I might be having a heart attack. Any chance you can get over here to get me to the ER? He's like, be right there. Yeah. So he had to ask his assistant where the hospital was. We literally had just gotten to town. Yeah. So he zips over. He's there in less than 10 minutes and takes me in and go through, and they see, I walk in the door. I tell them what's going on. They take my blood pressure and heart rate. They're like, yep, get her back. I didn't even sit down. And that never happens, in ER. So I was like, oh, shoot. And so had an EKG, ECG, did all the scans, checked everything, saw a cardiologist, whole 9 yards. They're like, everything looks fine. But, you're going through a move. It's been stressful. And I'm like, yeah, but this don't stress me out. So, okay, maybe. I had to stay there for like 4 hours because they wouldn't release me until everything settled. Like my heart rate and my blood pressure had to be back to normal. So 4 hours later, they released me to go home. No real answers. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Okay. And at the time, I didn't acknowledge it, but I just became more and more anxious. And that because this thing had just happened and really scared me. So about 10 days later, had just gotten moved into the house, made a Target run, came home with all the stuff. Furniture had not even arrived yet. And I walk into the bathroom and my bladder nothing, just bladder. And then my heart rate goes up again. Everything goes up again. Call my husband again. I'm like, I think I need to go back. And he's like, gee, okay. So he zips home, gets me there again. And they're like, same things, have this new addition. So they did this whole scan, all my organs, like every organ. I was there for a long time, getting everything checked. And at the end of it, they're like, it's the second time we've seen you. We think there's probably some things going on with your hormones, given your age. And, and then the ER nurse like snuck me a piece of paper and he's like, this person isn't in our system. So I can't say this out loud, but I think this might be someone you want to call. And it's just this torn up piece of paper with a doctor's name and a phone number. And
sounds shady.
I know it was so funny, but also
like a drug deal or something.
I know. He was like, don't go to anybody in our system. Try this one instead. So it was like, okay. And also the mention you've had a lot of going on. Do you have a therapist? And oh no, I just got into town. I barely figured out where you guys are. So we get into the car and because they're like, maybe these are panic attacks. Have you ever had those before? No, never had any anxiety or panic attacks before. So this is all new. And so we get in the car and my husband's like, babe, you and your good friend anxiety have been traveling this road together for a while now. And I'd always push back. And I'm like, I'm not anxious. The world just has a lot going on and there's a lot to be concerned about. And we have a family and I'm not anxious. It's just, I'm taking care of everybody. And that right there, that tone of voice, denial.
That's where you kind of need to have
thing.
the mirror so you can see it, right?
Exactly. So he's like, it might be some time to dig in, babe. Kids are out of the house. You've given everything to all of us. And it might be time to dig in. So I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I really couldn't fight with him. He'd been to the ER with me twice in the 10 days. So really wasn't in a position to push back at that point. And really had gotten to a point, as I reflected over the previous couple of years before that, had really started being like, I should be more content than I am. I should feel more satisfied than I do. Looking at my life, I don't feel where I feel like I should look. Excuse me, not as content, all those things. And so I did. I called that doctor and excuse me. Sorry about that. And I did get in. He was more of a holistic practitioner. He started asking me the right questions about connecting my emotions to, you're going through midlife stuff. We've done this blood work. Excuse me, got me on a biomedical HRT to kind of help get my hormones straightened out, because I was trying to do things as healthy and holistic as possible. And I ate really clean. Like I said, I moved my body. I got back from a run when this all happened. So, but what I hadn't been doing is tending to my mental and emotional health piece. Like I've been tending to the physical, taking the right supplements, eating the right foods, moving my body, but I wasn't tending to all the other stuff. And there was a lot of other stuff that needed to be unpacked and moved through. And it was boiling over. Like our bodies are not meant to carry all of this. And it was years of, I had a very emotionally volatile home life growing up. Excuse me. I'm not dying here, I promise.
Do I need to give you a moment, man? We can talk for a second. You can have a drink and calm down a little bit just so you can talk.
Yeah, getting excited.
There's no point in telling a story if you can't talk.
I know, if I'm going to fall over in the middle of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want that.
That's another show. No, sorry about that. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So I got the blood work done I needed to. And he was like, I think that the anxiety piece is probably why your blood pressure is so up and down. But while you're figuring that out, because I interviewed a therapist, I did that whole thing, did the whole speed dating with the therapist to test them out and see which one was going to fit. Which I know another friend uses that. Which I recommend. You need to find a therapist if you dive in that you're going to feel safe with, or you won't do the work. And the two of them, we just started asking me the right questions and started putting the pieces together. So I did go on blood pressure medication for a while. I was able to come off it 6 months later because he was right. It was in fact the anxiety piece that was, impacting my blood pressure. And so I was able to get in and start unpacking all that had been going on. And that was the beginning of the story, of diving in.
Yeah. Well, I can see why. I mean, that's not a hard one to figure out.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious. When you go through something like that, it's going to affect you in ways that you don't even expect, because first of all, you're not aware of it. It's not something you've done before. And anytime Jody Lynn, we've talked about this a lot. Anytime that we go through something where we're having to work on ourselves, it's always hard. It's easy to see in somebody else. It's like that mirror is so easy to see somebody else is going through it.
I can fix you and you and you and you, but no, there's nothing wrong.
and even if you can admit there's something wrong, well, it's not really anything.
Yeah, I should be able to deal with it on my own in 5 minutes or less.
That's right. Yeah, this is a quickie. This is not going to be any big deal.
Yes.
That's an interesting segue, because I really went into therapy thinking, gonna go in 6 months, be better, head back home, and be done with it. I'm still in therapy, and it's 5.5 years later. Now I've learned a ton, and I am not the same person I was 5.5 years ago. I'm just not. I realized how many things I'd been carrying. I'd been living in this stratosphere of one primary emotion a day. Everything else gets stuffed. Take care of everybody else first. If there's time left for me, great. If not, I was really good about moving my body, but in terms of anything else, keep going. don't sit in the quiet, because when you sit in the quiet, the other stuff comes up and starts rumbling and makes you uncomfortable, and you don't want to deal with that. So you keep being busy, you keep being productive. And I had to unpack and unlearn all those years of production for affirmation, being the good girl, not disappointing anyone, and having that be my identity. Very codependent relationships, very trauma bonded relationships. And it just made me realize of like, you know what? I'm talking to a lot of other women my age, and they may not have had the same experience as me, but there are too many of us. We are getting these messages when we are little girls about how we're supposed to show up in the world. And little boys too. We're getting these messages. Yeah. And by the time we get to, our adolescent years, we've been given this drill of what's expected of us. And we're trying to live in alignment with that expectation. And our own expectations get abandoned. And sometimes no one ever even asks. I mean,
they become our expectations.
We take them on. We take them on. Exactly. And at some point along the way, all of a sudden you've gone to college, you've gotten the degree, you found the partner, you got the house, you bought the car, you had the kids. Everything's supposed to be peachy. You've got the job, whatever it is. And all of a sudden you're like, something's not working here. Like, I'm just not in alignment. And that's really where I was in my late 40s, where I was starting to sense. And I was watching, we have 3 daughters. I was watching them go through and ask themselves different questions than we had asked, and both learning from what they saw from us that they didn't want to repeat, and also seeing that we were different than the generation before us. I mean, it was definitely that combination of both. And I was like, they seem to have a hold of something here that I don't quite have a grasp on. They were talking about healthy boundaries and taking time out from conversations if they got too heated, and returning to them later. And I'm like, we're not done talking yet. What are you talking about? Get back in here. I mean, that was, and so it was just all these things that we were already starting to kind of pay attention to and listen to, realizing if we don't pay attention to these things, we're not going to have any relationships with our kids, because they just are choosing to operate differently in a healthy way. And while our initial response was defensive and uncomfortable, as we started practicing these things, we're like, there might be something to this here. So there was an unfolding happening within me, but I had no idea what I was getting into when I started this journey. And which is good, because I think if I had, I would have never done it. It's also the best and smartest and healthiest decision I've ever made. And so about 1.5 years into it, my husband and I were doing a dream wall. It was his activity on his birthday. He wanted to do it. And he asked if I'd do it with him. I'm like, sure, sounds great. So we do it. And out of that dream wall came this idea. I started first with a podcast in the summer of 2021. And he came out of it with ideas, but I'm the one that came out of it with an actionable item, even though it was his idea. And so I was like, wait a minute. We have to start having these conversations. And through this time, through my work with my therapist, through watching things my kids were learning, my husband was in his own therapy, we started kind of collectively and individually started putting pieces together of a framework of things to consider that can keep you from having these breakdowns, hitting these walls. And kind of unknowingly, once I sat down, I was able to I had mentored a gal while she was in college at my husband's previous job. I'd worked in the mentoring program there. And then my middle daughter's college roommate, they were 2020 college grads and needed jobs. Yeah. And so they needed stuff on their resume. And so I was like, one of them knew how to set up websites and social media platforms. And the other one knew how to edit podcast and set those things up. So I'm like, do you guys want to help me start this? Because those are things I really know. And I can give you, I can't give you a lot money wise, but I can get you experience. And so they did. So, in May we had a meeting and we started talking about what we wanted, what I wanted this to look like. And through those conversations with them and my family and some mentors that they'd had, we came up with the talking points that have become what I call the FEEL framework: finding empowerment, embracing layers. And I wanted FEEL to be the acronym because that is, for me, like, we don't stop to feel. And we categorize emotions as good or bad. Emotions are clues.
Yeah.
Positive, negative, good, bad. And we hear a lot of narratives about how we are supposed to feel, starting when we're little kids. Girls and little girls and women learn early on: anger, bad. Not anger, bad manners. Don't be angry. Don't throw a fit. Don't make noise. And boys, be strong, be, you know, and never mind the sensitivity, creativity of who they are meant to be within their unique selves. So we get these, again, I use the word scripts a lot, but we get these scripts early, and like, that's taking us out. We have got to start allowing ourselves space and room to feel and acknowledge and quit denying, because these things build up in our bodies and they come out in episodes like I had. They come out in autoimmune diseases, heart attacks, cancer diagnoses, obesity. I mean, there's just so many things. There's all kinds of, alcoholism, drug problems, food addictions. I mean, all these other ways that we mask and cope and numb just so we don't have to feel. And I'm like, wait, this has to stop. And I'm not the only, and I focused on women because that's who I knew. And that was the story that I thought I had the best background in telling. And I'm like, I've lived all over the country. I know a ton of women. I'm just going to start inviting them on to be with me. And so my first season, mostly 2 seasons, are just women I knew around the country that I'm like, that are willing to come on and have this conversation with me and walk through these talking points that have now become the framework that we've built our whole platform and network around. Like, we got to take the stigmas and the fear and then and change the narrative for the generations coming up, and wherever you are in your journey. Like, it is not too late, whether you are 20 or you are 80. Do whatever time you have. You owe it to yourself. You're valuable. You're worthy to take this time and do this, because then you not only show up, the big mantra that you hear is that taking care of yourself is selfish and putting yourself first is selfish. No, it is actually, everyone wins when you do that. No one wants the crabby, irritable boss or coworker or mom or neighbor. They want the refreshed, refilled, rejuvenated, focused, present person. And you can only do that when you prioritize your wellness and make sure you're filling your own cup. And within that comes all the other framework that I talk about: the healthy boundaries, the connections between your mental, emotional, physical health, living out of your own expectations, knowing your why and your values, embracing all your beautiful, complex layers. Because listen, we've all got chapters that we wish we could do over again. There's, whether or not, maybe you're lucky. Maybe you're like Walt. Maybe there's no chapters.
No.
But we all have those places and spaces you look back. Oh, I can't believe I stayed in that relationship for 3.5 years. What could have been? I've been thinking, all those things. Taking the judgment lens off of it and putting on the curiosity lens that, my therapist really worked with me on. And a little bit of Ted Lasso too. He likes to talk about that too.
I love
credit where credit's due on that. Be a goldfish. But in all seriousness, though, really, looking at that chapter, that decision, that relationship, that thing that happened to you, and put on that lens of curiosity and allow yourself to go in that way, to look at that season and how things came about, and getting like, you know what, I don't love that, but I see how it happened. And so I'm going to take off this shame and judgment. I'm going to approach it instead with curiosity and empathy and patience and grace. And I'm going to allow myself to move that through and cry and laugh and hit a pillow against the wall in a safe place, to whatever it is I need to do to get that out of my body. And I'm going to let myself acknowledge that and call it and give it room. So I'm not carrying it around anymore. And it doesn't show up later in a blowing up on my partner when something triggers me, or snapping somebody's head off in the meeting. And it's also going to allow me to see myself as valuable. I'm going to prioritize myself because I want to show up feeling well in whatever room I'm in and in all my relationships. And I want people to feel like I'm with them. I'm present. I'm not distracted. And I think in all of that, when we make these shifts, it can be a shock to people. I mean, for me, when I really realized a year and a half, 2 years in, I have to make some shifts in my life. And that includes, deciding what fits and what doesn't fit anymore. And, I spent years, like I said earlier, in codependent trauma bond relationships, and there were some healthy boundaries. And I want to, say, healthy boundaries, people get weird with boundaries sometimes. I'm like, it's about your behavior. It's not about someone else's behavior. It's I statements. And because the way you communicate these is everything. If I go in, I'm like, if you're going to say that, then I'm just going to walk out of the room. So you better not say that again. Well, that conversation is over before it got started. That is how Melissa Crook, the first 49 years, operated. So I can tell you from my own experience, that never goes well. But if you come in with, like, I've been doing some work on myself and I'm really trying to get in alignment, process some things and get on the healthy track. So I'm just letting you know that if the discussion in today's at the family reunion this weekend goes down this road, I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to participate in that. If I see this happening, you whatever that looks like, but I won't be sticking around to participate. But I didn't want to just walk out and not give you a warning. I wanted to give you a little background on why. Hopefully, you can respect that. Either way, that's the decision I'm going to make. Then it's about your behavior. And then they have their free choice. Now, they may not like it and they may challenge you on it and push back on it, but you're going to find out real quick the relationships in your life that are for you and the relationships that are in your life that liked the way you were showing it before. It worked a lot better for them. That's a hard pill to swallow because sometimes it comes from unexpected or hurtful places. And you have to really release. I thought for years that I just told people, I know this is healthier. I know this is healthier. If you just do this, it's healthier. If I said it enough times that I could badger them into doing it. It doesn't.
That doesn't work?
No, I know. I'm here to say, Jody Lynn, get off that wagon. Doesn't work. And, but I really, and I spent years in places and spaces in time that if I had not been so disassociated from my body and had been paying attention to what was happening to me physically when I got into those spaces or around those people, I would have done healthier for myself. But I didn't. I was dissociated because I was convinced this is how I need to do it. This is what being a good friend, daughter, employee, all these things looks like. And whatever that means for me, I'm just, I'm just going to push that aside and just keep moving forward. And so, so when all of a sudden you make a shift, especially when you're 50, they're pretty used to you showing up a certain way. And they don't want to shift with you. Then you have to make some decisions about where those relationships, spaces, and places are going to fit or not in your life anymore. But I will tell you, I've never felt more content, settled, alive, creative, vibrant than I do right now.
Jody Lynn, do you get the feeling like I do that Melissa's a little bit passionate about this?
I know.
A little bit.
My coffee attack earlier was probably because I'm so excited to share. Yeah, no, I
mean, this is a lot like I have another co-host named Joel Elson. He was I've been doing the show now for 12 and a half years. He was one of my first interviews way back then, and we've been doing the shows ever since. And he's kind of the same way. He gets very passionate to the point where not quite so much anymore, but it used to be. I could start the show off, ask him a question, then go take a break for half an hour, and then come back and participate with the next question.
1,000%. I have talking points partly to keep my shows from being 3 hours long. Honestly, it's just to keep me on script.
So yeah, I was being just a little sarcastic when I said I think she's a little passionate.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot of passion. And I can really see why. Like, everything that you're saying is so instrumental. And I mean, when you're hit with that physical health challenge and you have no idea what is going on, that's incredibly scary. And to find out it's because you're so dissociated from your emotions and all the stuff that you're carrying within, that's that's something to process. Of course you're passionate about it. Like, you didn't have to take a pill to, get better. You just needed to work on your emotions.
Yeah. And I think
Amazing.
that I think that is something, I'm so glad you said that, because I tell women all the time, you got to advocate for yourself. And especially when you're talking to your doctors or healthcare practitioners or therapists or whoever it is, be very clear about things and get curious and asking why something's happened. So you're not just masking it with something that's not going to really help you solve or get to the core issue. Because, I ran around for years operating in this very hyper vigilant, very mama bear, going to protect my own state. And I think in the embracing layers part, that for me is like, it's the thing I talk about most when I'm talking to women in person, whether it's speaking to them one-on-one at a seminar or a meeting, or it's via my online course or wherever it's at. It is always starting with that embracing layers piece, because it's like, you got to do this work first, or these other things are going to be really hard for you to do, and see yourself as worthy enough and valuable enough to make the time and commitment to yourself. So you got to start with this kind of dirty work first, but also it's going to help you understand so much about yourself. I mean, the way I interacted with people, my responses, if I felt like somebody was coming for one of my own. I mean, there's just so many things. And I cringe now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could go back. And that's a part of embracing my layers right now that I'm really working on, is releasing the idea. I cannot do my 30s and 40s over again, but I can acknowledge the fact that, listen, given what I knew at the time, I was doing the best I could. Also, there was some problems within that, and it caused some harm in ways. And so being able to hold that, because I think that's a big part of the nuance piece, is remembering we can be sad and angry and excited and hopeful all at the same time. We have that ability to hold that nuance. There's no need to stuff. There's no need to ignore, give all of that room to breathe, and get curious too as to, where's that coming from? Is that from an old false narrative that I've lived with that I need to unpack and unlearn? Or is that based in truth? Because I spent years treating all my thoughts as truth. And I had to realize, oh, no, that's something that I picked up along the way, whether I was 6, 8, 16, or 40, that's not actually true for me.
Well, it's not surprising. The more that we now know about psychology, because the psychology field has really advanced tremendously over the last 10, 20 years.
So much.
Oh, yeah. But from what we now understand, a lot of what people believe to be true, they believe it because they've simply been exposed to it over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's actually something you can do it to yourself. You can actually program yourself that way. Just expose yourself over and over again, and you start to believe it. It doesn't even have to be true. It can be a complete lie, and you can still believe it.
Yeah. 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 And I think I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think it's a really good point, and something that a friend pointed out to me the other day. And she's like, because I'm like, this time that I went back at 50 into therapy and really, really dove in was my third time. Like, I'd went once in college, I'd went once in my 30s, and progress was made. Also, I think there was some sense within my nervous system, once my kids were out of the house, that it was safe and time to dive in. And also too, I think a lot of it in terms of who I was working with therapy wise, therapists can only work with what you tell them. And so if you're not willing to go, or even you're not even aware that it's time to unpack something, that there's nothing else they can really work with there. And also, practices changed a lot. The therapists I went to in the early 90s and the early 2000s didn't know the same things that my therapist that I started with in 2019 know. I mean, so that's a really good point too. And so I've had to learn, like, it's like, geez, why didn't that come up in my early 30s? I'm da, 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 da. And then it's like, it's changed a lot. We're talking about things now. We've only been talking about prioritizing our self-care. And I always try to be, self-care is a buzzword, but I call it self-care is healthcare. This isn't the surface stuff. This is the stuff that really, really fills your cup and takes care of you. But boundaries, no one was talking about boundaries 15 years ago. Boundary was where the state line was. It was geographical. We weren't talking about it in terms of relationships or interactions or how we carve out time. So there's just a lot, we just know more.
It's true. Yeah. I had a guest on a couple weeks ago who made the point that she was feeling a little bit discouraged because only about 10% of the population, according to the stat that she had found, actually are doing work on themselves to grow themselves and so forth. And my instant response, I didn't even think about it. My instant response was, wow, 10%. I can remember when it was less than 1%.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, that's like a massive increase. It hurts like, oh, too small.
Yeah, it's all about perspective. I think I'm 55. In my generation, I think we're starting to talk about these things. Like we are, but we all kind of got to that midlife point where like, this is not working. And our mothers and grandmothers never said anything about this. How in the world did we not have, but there wasn't the language. There wasn't I call it permission. There wasn't that feeling of safety to have the conversations. And so we are opening a door that I believe our daughters and granddaughters are going to sprint through. And I'm excited to see what they're going to know and what they're going to be able to do. And because we're talking about it, like I said, I have 3 daughters. They're going to know the questions to start asking their doctors in their early 30s and mid 30s that didn't come up for us, that no one was talking to us about. They're going to live their lifestyle is going to be designed in a way where they are not working 80-hour work weeks and putting everything else on the back burner, because they've learned from what they saw. And they're like, that does not work for me. I am not doing that to myself.
It's not good. Not good at all.
Yeah.
There's another part of your story, though, that really resonates with me. I have again, this is a little bit of a sarcastic thing, but I have a way of looking at how we learn from hardships, from crash and burn moments and so forth. And one of the ways that I look at it is, how long does it take for us to get the clue?
Yeah.
And the way the universe tends to deliver stuff, it starts off with a tap on the shoulder, and then a whisper in the ear, and then a push, and then a shove. And if you're still not paying attention, it gets out the 2x4. Well, you listened at about stage 2 or maybe 3.
Yeah. I did, and I definitely had stage 1 and stage 2 nudges starting when I was probably about 45. And I've just chalked them up to, again, because our systems, the way our systems are set up, especially in Western society, things are very much siloed, and there isn't many people. We're starting to see it a little bit more now as there's more practitioners that are more intentional about this, but there aren't people asking. And that self-reflection piece, I was also, and this journey is individual for everybody. For me, I was very much in faith spaces that I kept being turned back to passages in the Bible that really made it like, well, if you were just more faithful, you wouldn't be so anxious. And rather than,
which is ironic when you consider that the Bible is about 1/2 judgmental.
Absolutely. And that's a whole other discussion.
We can have it.
Yeah. And so it really did a lot. So I just kept doing all of these things to try to be more faithful. And I wasn't getting to the root. And it was a lot of being really hard on myself and really critical and really discouraged. And because no matter what I did, it wasn't going away. And that was, and so I tried that, approach with the first couple of nudges I was getting. And it took that, that final nudge. And, and there were some people that really influenced me. I listened, during the pandemic, I listened to a lot of Brené Brown. I listened to a lot of Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach. I read
Good choices, by the way.
Glenn, thank you. I read Glennon's book, and I'd known about Glennon. Like, she and I are similar age, so she'd been doing things all along. I also knew about the big shift she made in her life when she finally started living as her authentic self versus all of the, narratives that she'd been given. I mean, she's a classic example of what so many of us do. And then she so I was listening to a lot of those things, and that was really, as I was going into therapy, as I was starting to ask the questions, as I was starting to unpack, what I've been doing is not working. And what I learned for me, and everybody's journey is different, it was never about the way God was approaching me. It was about the way the church was approaching me. And so my shift, when people I walked away from traditional, religious systems at that point. I'm like, these are not serving me. And these just aren't serving me. So
you're not alone in that one. A lot of people have been doing
that. Yeah. And it's like, so that's, there's a bit, and that was a big shift for a lot of my friends, because I had grown up in the Mormon church, left that in college. That had its own number that it did on me in my upbringing.
We could do an entire show on that part of your life, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I've got friends who are like, you should write a book. I'm like, we'll see. And then, so what I ended up going into very, 90s, 2000s evangelical spaces that honestly felt more freeing than what I'd been in. But as I started uncovering those and started unpacking all of that, I was like, there's still a lot of problems here. And it's like, so people often ask me, well, you walked away from God. No, I didn't walk away from God. I walked away from this institution that I don't feel like God is speaking to me through. And so
the way I like to express that is if Jesus actually did come back, he would look around and say, what are you guys doing?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, like, man, we just really, really missed the boat on some things here. And as humanity, I participated in a lot of that for a lot of years, because I was, trying to find ways to not be anxious and to save myself and all those kinds of things. And so, there's a lot, and that was a part of my narrative, though, was unpacking the fear. In so many ways, I was operating out of fear and rather than, and listen, fear in the right context can be a great motivator. But if not, when it's being used as the prime motivator to get you to believe something or in a system, when it's not wrapped in love, when it's not wrapped in encouragement and was there some fear starting a podcast? Sure. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. Really, but it was one of those things. I'm like, it's worth it to me. So I'm just going to take the plunge, because I'm going to be I don't want to wonder why I never did it. So that's an example of the kind of fear that can be a great motivator to just release, versus the fear that's used to keep you in place, to keep you living within a narrative that fits a system. And we're talking about religion. It's in all kinds of our systems. I mean, there's all kinds of systems that are operated out of fear to keep people in line.
And there's an interesting fact about almost all of them. They're all crumbling.
They really are, because people have had enough. People are just like, this isn't, and I think because of they're hitting these walls like I have. And you're like, this way of life is not serving me. I mean, my husband and I, in 2018, ironically, the year before all this happened, it was literally exactly a year, because summer of 2018 was our 25th wedding anniversary. And we took a 2-week trip to Europe. We'd never been to Europe before. Took a 2-week trip, spent a lot of time in Italy and France and Germany and Switzerland. Most of our time was in Italy and France, and then a few days in the other places. But as we moved around Italy, and all those places have their own issues, so don't get me wrong. But from a lifestyle standpoint, from putting a sign up, we'll be back when we're done with our nap. Yeah. Who knows when that'll be?
Yeah.
Everyone's okay with that. Like nobody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're not here. I need that dress today. I mean, there's nobody doing that. When you sit down at a restaurant, they're not coming back and checking on you every 5 minutes to see if you're ready to get your check and move out so the next one can come in. You have to ask them. They want you to stay and have an experience and enjoy your food and enjoy the company. I mean, it's just and it was such a wake up call of like, oh my, all these, and that really, as I look back now, I'm like, that was a sign. I just missed it a little bit. My system, like I had been last couple previous years, I've been experiencing a lot of acid reflux and some other things going on with my hormone levels. By the time I was 2 or 3 days into that trip, I ate anything I wanted to across Italy. I didn't have one episode the whole time. I was relaxed. The food was healthy and natural and homemade, and my system was settled. And it was like, this is not a bad way to live. I think we could learn something from this. My husband was the most relaxed I'd seen him in years, but it took us both, a couple of days to kind of come down, but it was a really kind of a moment of, and as I went through this and I thought it back, I'm like, I kind of got a sign of this a year and a half ago. And I just kind of like, oh, that's just because of this. And I, went back into my way of being. But I think it just came to that realization that we as women don't have to live like this anymore. And and if you can ask yourself and have this framework, because life's going to knock you off the tracks. But if you've got this framework to help get you back on the tracks, then you can avoid these big hits. You can find ways to prioritize your self-care and ask yourself these important questions. I say on a seasonal basis, check in with yourself. Like if you're looking at things in your calendar and you're feeling angsty about all of them, it's time to take a look at your boundaries and your expectations and your values and your why. And see what's out of alignment. It's time to start saying no to some things and maybe not so many yeses, or maybe yes to something that scares you a little, but it's going to be that thing that you don't want to look back on and think you never did. So like, checking in with yourself and then, being so mindful of who you surround yourself with and the voices that you allow into your space.
That's a big one for me. In fact, a season isn't often enough. I do it daily. I can't do it anymore. Any broader framework than that, I start to wonder if I don't do it daily. So I have like sometimes hour to hour practice. Check in with myself, what's going on, and I don't always like the answer, but again, right, Jody Lynn? Yeah,
of course. I think that's a part of the process too. Like you were talking about, Melissa, the judgment versus curiosity. That's, when you start seeing these things, realizing these things, I think we've all been taught to like bring out the really big stick and like whack, just keep whacking yourself over and over again. Like, oh, see, you're an idiot, or see, you're not seeing it, or see, you shouldn't be anxious right now. Like you're not doing life right, or whatever that might be. And like shifting that mindset to, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. It's about being curious to understand, why is this coming up for me? And it's okay that it's coming up. I love how you put that you have space to feel all of it.
Yeah.
Because you do. And without that judgment, just from a place of curiosity. And sometimes I've found that things, I just need to look at them and then they're like, oh, and they move right through me. And it wasn't this big song and dance I thought it needed to be. It was just this moment in time where I'm like, I see you, I got you, I'm here with you in this emotion, like I would for any one of my best friends.
Yeah. And that's a key part too. And because the first time my therapist told me, she's like, I want to spend some time this week tracking how you talk to yourself. I'm like, oh, my self-talk is good. I like myself. I mean, I know I'm kind of coming to you as a disheveled mess right now, but I like myself. I don't like some things that I've experienced, but I like myself. Whoa. I mean, it was so eye-opening. It was 1 week and I was like, my gosh. And it's so subconscious. The little things like, and for me, the two keys were, it's not my anxiety. It's the anxiety I'm experiencing. It's not my identity. I'm not stupid for doing that. That decision might have been stupid, but I'm not stupid because we all have those days. We have bad days. Sometimes we make stupid decisions.
Bad
But
months, bad years.
Bad months, bad years, bad seasons, exactly. But it's like not attaching your identity to it. Because one of the things I have women do in this process is I have them identify their character traits. And they start telling me all their roles, their titles. No. Adjectives. Who are you? Sassy, excited, passionate, introverted, what? And they're like, oh. And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, sit with that for a minute. And because then they're like, well, let me ask my kids or let me ask my coworkers or my husband. I'm like, no. That is you allowing them to define who you are. Now they can affirm things in you, but I want you to define who you are, because by doing that, then you start thinking about, well, what are the things that I'm passionate? I have what are 5 activities that nourish you? Oh, okay. So you've defined the character traits, 5 activities that nourish you. Are any of those?
Maybe even just take the time to figure out what one activity is. That
exactly. And I give 5, but I tell women, and with my online course that's going to be coming out soon, I'm like, between modules, I'm like, stop and sit with this. This is not meant to be zoomed through today, even though you could. It's meant for you to stop. You might need to sit with this a week or 2 or a month. Stick some time in your calendar to come back and pick up. But get some recognition around this space and sit with it and give yourself patience, because when you go to make these shifts and you finally start paying attention to you and investing in you, it's not going to necessarily happen overnight. And we are in a fast food society. We want boom, boom, give me my Starbucks, give me my, Arby's, give me my DoorDash, whatever it is. And that's not how this works. But no, I promise you it's worth it if you do it.
The funny thing is that what we're really trying to avoid doing is taking on a new habit that we know is going to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. We don't like we're very uncomfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I tell women, I'm like, listen, I welcome you on this journey. I want you all here. I cannot fix this for you. You are going to have to be willing to sit in the discomfort, answer the hard questions for yourself, and make, and just make a deal with yourself that you'll no longer self-sacrifice. You'll no longer abandon yourself. But I can't do it for you. So if you're looking for that magic, I don't have the magic. I have a framework that's going to require grace, empathy, and accountability.
I'm curious what your take is on what I'm about to say, because this is a realization I came to for myself. I'm curious to see if it resonates with you. I finally came to the realization. Now, let me give you a little backstory first. I started this podcast because I was in trouble. My business had crashed in 2008 with a crisis. I had nothing to do with the crisis, but I was like, a casualty, and I couldn't recover. So by 2012, I was deep in debt. My ex-wife, both of us were in really bad shape at that point, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. Why was what I was doing before not working? I didn't understand that. So I needed help. I needed help to figure all that stuff out. In the course of trying to figure all that stuff out, in the course of coming to grips with all that, I also realized that I was very focused on finding that fix. And what I discovered fairly early on was I didn't need to be fixed.
Yes.
And that just kind of, that goes against the grain, because something's broken here.
Yeah. Oh, so good. My friend Rachel Lavin and Dr. Fannie Leo Belanger, both of them are friends in my network that I met through this work. And they are they end any time with me that they're on a show with me or on doing their own thing. You are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. Now, there may be things that are broken about how you're going about things, but you yourself are beautiful today. Yeah. And also, we're going to make some shifts in narratives and give you a framework so you can feel beautiful, feel healthy, feel, but so yes, that was, and because I went, like I said earlier, I went into therapy. I like the end goal. Like, okay, what's the end goal? What's the prize? And my husband for years is like, enjoy the journey. I'm like, journey schmurney. I got to get to the finish line. I ran track. You get over the finish line first and you're the victor and everybody celebrates that. And no one's celebrating when you're 50 yards down the line. I mean, so hard to tell how old I am, 50 meters. And so I had to realize like with the layers piece, that's where it really was. This is an ongoing, this arrival idea that we have is a false narrative. And you can arrive and then you can just stop and be stuck and be comfortable and complacent, or you can continue to unravel and unlearn and relearn and move forward and own that piece of like, listen, yeah, I did do that thing 10, 15 years ago. I know differently now. So I'm going to proceed in a different way. I'm going to continue to be open to the fact that I just didn't know now what I knew then. I'm going to be open to the fact, I'm going to put my ego aside and I'm just going to own that there's going to be opportunities to learn and unlearn things. I am a white, cisgendered, middle-class woman in America. They don't come much more privileged than me other than white, cisgendered, middle-class men in America and beyond. And so I'm going to own that. I'm going to, one of my goals is like that all women, no matter who they are, how they identify, what their background is, feels welcome in my space. And when you do that, you have to own that sometimes you're going to get it wrong and say the wrong thing and being open to the correction. Or that I was recording with a friend yesterday and the way I referred to a difficult topic we were on was very 1990s of me. And so she corrected me in a very wasn't like, it was like, actually, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for doing that, because I can't learn if I'm not willing to hear and improve on that and not get defensive about it. And I am the defensive grand champion of the world. You can fire me up in a nanosecond. So I've had to really, people that have known me over my life are like, I'm very competitive. And so these are things, like I said, you teach, and I don't even call it teaching. I facilitate and offer and share and live through a framework that you need the most on yourself, because these things that I ask myself now, I have to ask myself regularly all the time to make sure that I'm not getting off track. So I'm always very open about that. Listen, ladies, I have not arrived. I am on this journey with you. I just know that this journey is leading me down the path I've always hoped to be on. I just didn't know how to get there.
Jody Lynn, this is one of those
Beautiful.
conversations where I look up at the clock and I say to myself, we could do another hour of this thing at least.
Totally. Just flew by.
But what we do have to do is do our usual thing. We have 3 things we like to do, Melissa, at the end of every show. First one is we like to say, Melissa, I mean, you're clearly passionate. You clearly like working with women. You clearly like doing this kind of thing. We should probably let listeners know how to reach you, just in case. I mean, just on the off chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. If you go to our website, embracinglayers.com, it's all there. It's got our podcast episodes. We do blogs about each podcast episode with ways to engage with that episode. We have weekly panels that we do with groups of women. If you like more of a panel conversation on our YouTube channel, we have a book. If you're a reader and not a podcast listener, we have a book with this framework in it where we've taken really helpful quotes from past guests and we give you ways to engage with that. It's great for a book club or journaling. I can come talk to you in person and lay out this framework with you and answer your questions and work through it with you together over a half a day, a weekend. I can make it as long or short as you need. And then I am debuting on July 1st an online course. And that's really the deepest dive other than being in person. And what I like about the online course is that it allows you to do it on your own time. And then once you have it forever. So you can build your own event with other women around it with you. My friend Kim Mosman is creating a workbook for me that will be ready to go with this online course. So you'll purchase it one time, but then you've got it forever. The first time you go through it, I offer jumping on halfway through the course. And again, at the end, to answer your questions. And that's all part of what you get with the package. And it's just a really intentional way to go through it. And like I said, there's some accountability involved. Like if you stop a module to work on that certain point, then you got to come back to it. It won't do it for you. So, and my goal is, as I've done this over the years, is to just meet women at all the different mediums that I can get this information to them, that they can connect with it. So whether it's, and the nice thing is that like once you finish the book or you finish the online course, we have two podcasts a week with new guests, and all of their resources that they share that help support you in this feel framework are on our website. You can go follow them yourself, access them, utilize them. So and then we have a Substack where if you want to engage with those guests who have books, we do book clubs with them. We bring them as guests on our Substack, talk about their book, and then we do book clubs with our own book and their books. So there's something for everybody, whether you're auditory or what, however you are motivated to learn. There's a framework. There's a framework within that framework to meet you where you are. But embracinglayers.com has it all.
All right. And we'll make sure Jen will include a link in the show notes too, so that, we like to make things easy whenever we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And our socials are there too. We're all over the socials. Our socials are all there too.
Good. Okay, good. Second thing we like to do, or I like to do, is I like to turn to Jody Lynn, partly because she has an amazing perspective on things. And she's also a coach, and so she knows that side of it too. But she's also, you can tell, she spends a lot of the time listening and taking notes. I don't know if you noticed that, but she's a copious note taker. And so I know she's going to have a really interesting take on how do you tie together the conversation today. So Jody Lynn, how do you tie together the conversation today?
Oh my gosh, I think there's so many things. For me, like growing up, and I really connected to what you were saying today about that false narrative that we get into, whether it was somebody that told us or the way that we observed things. And then we get into life, into this mode of like, I need the house and the car and the kids and the things. And, we get busy to bypass. And I love today that we talked about embracing all of it, the perceived good, bad, and ugly, and how important that is for us. And I love that you're doing this work, because I think even though 10% are on the journey now, Walt, I think the entire world benefits from this. The entire world benefits from us learning to show up authentically, to be present in these moments, and even maybe more so in understanding ourselves and understanding what we are reflecting out into the world. And I love that you said that you're not broken. And I think that that's such a beautiful message to champion around this planet, the universe, because we aren't broken. We're in need of learning to accept certain parts of us, to understand the other parts, and to move forward in a way that feels authentic and beautiful and in the right direction. And there is no right or wrong when it comes to that. It's just a journey. So going back to looping all the way back around to enjoying the journey. So thank you for that message so much, Melissa.
Absolutely. Thank you for that perspective. I appreciate that.
She has a great perspective. She really does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I love about her. Final thing I like to do with every show is something I started a few years ago. Now that we're in the 21st century, I noticed something that didn't exist before. Well, a lot of things exist that didn't exist before. We have an internet. We can do these shows. You're on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. She's in Canada. We got listeners all over the world. I mean, you couldn't do this 30 years ago.
No.
But along with that, it's now a different way of communicating with people. We have the social media thing, which has its whole thing attached to it. We've got blogging, we've got websites, we've got all this stuff. And people like you come along and you experience stuff and you want to share it with the world. So you can do that now. You share it with the world. And that's where I noticed we now share with the world. And in the process, we share with people who we never meet, we never see what the result is. They sometimes take what we give them and they use it, and it has some sort of great result. And we never find out about that, or sometimes we do, but most of the time we don't. And I said, there's a gap there. We need to fill that gap.
Yeah.
So Melissa, on behalf of those people you've never met and you've never seen and never will meet and never will see, who you've been helping in ways you don't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a really good point. I appreciate that. And yeah, every once in a while you get a glimmer. Somebody will say something or do something. You're like, I didn't know that I needed that or that it was important to me, because underneath all of this, I mean, there's just things that you have to do to make this all work that are just like, oh my God, did anybody hear that today? I mean, because there's just some administrative things within that that are just necessary. So yeah. And whoever you are, we're here for you and we want to support you, whatever that looks like.
I think we got a pretty good idea what it looks like today. We
me
heard
too.
that fairly clearly.
I know. I don't lack in substance on that front.
You
So
got it.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it, and best of luck with what you're doing. Congratulations on the course coming out. I mean, you got a lot of good stuff going on. So thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you, both Walt and Jody Lynn. This has been great. I appreciate it so much.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.